There is a rock in the middle of the South Atlantic, 2,000 kilometers from the nearest shore, so far from everything that the nearest land is just more ocean. And in 1821, in a damp, rat-infested little house on that rock, the man who once owned Europe is rotting away, slowly. The walls sweat, the wind never stops, and an entire empire still keeps soldiers posted outside his door because even dying, even broken, they are terrified of him. This is a man who crowned himself with his own hands, a man whose single word once moved 500,000 soldiers across a continent. So how does a mind like that end here, alone, on a rock, 5,000 miles from his throne? The answer is not bad luck. It is chemistry. For 15 years, every victory had pumped a flood of chemicals through his brain, and like any narcotic, the dose had to keep climbing. Until his own biology was so hijacked by winning that it had quietly deleted one simple human truth: that he could lose.
In File 1, we met the winner effect. The neuroscientist Ian Robertson described it best. Every time you win, your brain releases a surge of testosterone, and then dopamine, the exact same reward chemical that cocaine hijacks. And that surge does not just feel good, it physically rewires you. More confident, more aggressive, more willing to risk everything. You win once, and your brain is already rebuilt to chase the next hit. Now, imagine winning almost every time for 15 straight years. Austerlitz, Jena, Friedland. He took on every great empire in Europe, and he kept winning. Make no mistake, Napoleon genuinely was one of the most gifted commanders who ever lived. But that is the trap. Because every single triumph whispered the same poison, a little louder each time. The rules do not apply to you. And on the 2nd of December, 1804, inside Notre-Dame, he made that poison official. The Pope stood ready to crown him, as popes had crowned kings for 1,000 years, and Napoleon reached out, took the crown from his hands, and set it on his own head. No God, no Pope, no one above him, himself. That was not a coronation. That was a brilliant mind, bowing to its own ego. The first crack appeared in Spain. He invaded, expecting another quick, clean victory. Instead, he got a savage guerrilla war that bled his armies for years. A slow, infected wound he himself named the Spanish Ulcer. A healthy mind would have stopped, studied it, learned. But a brain soaked in 15 years of victory can't learn, because it no longer believes it can be wrong. So in 1812, he turned east, and he assembled the largest army the world had ever seen. Over 600,000 men. The target, Russia. Almost every experienced advisor he had begged him not to go. The distances were monstrous. The winter would be a slaughter. The supply lines simply did not add up. And he heard none of it, because deep in that rewired brain, a delusion had taken hold. That reality itself would bend for him. That the snow, the hunger, the very laws of nature would politely step aside for his genius. They did not. The Russians refused him the grand battle his genius needed. They simply retreated and burned everything behind them. Napoleon marched into a Moscow that was empty and on fire, and waited for a surrender that never came.
And then the winter he had been warned about arrived. Of the 600,000 who marched into Russia, barely 100,000 crawled back out. His invincible army became a frozen ribbon of corpses stretched 1,000 miles across the snow. The winter effect had finally met the one enemy that does not negotiate: reality. By April of 1814, the Allied armies had taken Paris. They forced him to abdicate, and in a cold palace at Fontainebleau, the man who could not lose finally shattered. Not slowly, all at once. And in the dark, he made a decision. If he could not control his empire, he would at least control his own death. He went for his pistols, but his squire had quietly emptied the powder from them. They would not fire. So he reached for a small black pouch he had worn around his neck ever since the nightmare of Russia. Poison. He swallowed all of it. And then, his own body refused the order. The poison had gone stale with age. Instead of a quiet death, it gave him violent, convulsing agony. The conqueror of Europe spent that night writhing on the floor, vomiting, and surviving. Reality would not even grant him this. The man who had decided the fate of millions was not allowed to choose how he himself would lose. They shipped him to a little island called Elba. It should have ended there. But here is the proof that this was a disease, not just ambition. He could not stop. Within a year, he escaped, landed in France, and raised an entire new army out of nothing but the force of his own legend. For 100 days, the impossible man was back. And then a muddy Belgian field called Waterloo ended it. Forever. Which is how he arrived at that rock in the ocean, where we began. Now, here is the part that should chill you. The winter effect is not some dusty relic of dead emperors. It is firing inside living brains, right now. The day trader who hits 3 winners in a row and bets the house on the 4th. The founder who, after one enormous success, drives the whole company off a cliff because he has stopped listening to anyone who dares say no. Winning feels exactly like proof that you are right. But here is the terrifying truth Napoleon never learned. Your brain cannot tell the difference between being brilliant and just being lucky. And the longer you win, the more certain and the more blind you become. This was File 3, the Invincible. The protocol is still running, and the next file is already on the table. Subscribe to the Hubris protocol.